God bless you. My name is Rosemary Loya, and you are watching the Redesigned podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have an amazing episode today. You're going to be so excited to hear from my new guest. But before we do that, I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet. You can find us at Redesigned Podcast right there on YouTube. You can also find us on the Redesigned Conference Facebook page as well, and across the Cross Church websites and pages. And so we want to make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss an episode. And also make sure you share this podcast with somebody, with a friend, a sister, somebody that you know that would be interested in listening. So thank you again for watching today and welcome. So I have such a wonderful guest that I'm really excited about. And so I want to introduce to you the mayor of my hometown of Harlingen, Texas, Mayor Norma Sepúlveda. Thank you so much, Mayor, for being with us today.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here with you. I am excited for everything that you're doing here on this podcast. Very,
Well,
very interesting. I love it.
well, thank you. Well, let me ask you, were you a cardinal or a hawk? We got to lay down the foundation, right?
I hope that this doesn't get me in trouble
Oh,
because you're
no, no, no.
wearing green. But I'm a
Okay.
cardinal.
Oh, I'm a cardinal
Okay, we're
too.
good then.
I'm wearing green because of the background.
I know. I was gonna say, I don't know. I feel like I'm being set up because you're wearing.
No, I'm a cardinal.
Yes.
And fun fact, my class, I'm the class of 1988, was the last graduating class of Harlingen High School before the South became or before it opened. So we were the
Okay.
last graduating class of Harlingen High School.
That's
And
incredible.
before it became North, I guess that's the way to say it.
Right. I
And
actually went to both schools, which I'm sure you did too,
yes.
where you would go to ninth and 10th grade was Alamo.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
no, I didn't get to
okay.
everything was at
It was
the
all at that. Okay.
campus. Yeah,
Then
the North campus.
then that changed. And then I think in 1994, 1993 was the last year. And there was another change in 1994.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, but
Yeah, so yeah, I'm
eternal
the
spirit never dies.
amen. Yeah, so I was born here in the Valley in Far, Texas, actually. My dad was born and raised in Harlingen, and my grandfather was born and raised in Harlingen, my dad's dad. My grandfather actually worked for the Pony Express and for the city of Harlingen
Oh, wow.
back in the who knows what years. And so that's an interesting fact about my family, how far our roots go. And so I've always loved Harlingen. I moved away from this city, man, back in the late 70s. Grew up in Houston, like during my teenage years, but I came back as a junior in high school. So
Wow.
you can imagine it was total culture shock because it's so different, right? The valley is different.
Yes.
But I'm so glad I did. So glad that we moved back to this area. But man, I'm so excited that you're here, and
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud to say that you are our mayor. I really, really do. I love following you on Facebook. And how does it feel? Like, how did you feel the moment that you were elected mayor?
First, thank you. I appreciate the support. It was something almost surreal when it happened. I campaigned for a long time, for
Mhm.
almost a year. And so when I remember the night that we were kind of waiting on the results, and I had like no desire ever to be in politics. I was kind of learning as I
Mhm.
went. And so I remember the night we had a watch party over at the Moon Rock.
Yes.
And so we were there waiting, and you get the first round of results, that is the
Mhm.
early vote.
Yeah.
And so in the early vote, it showed that I was ahead like by a large margin.
Wow.
But I knew that you still have to wait for the election day vote. So
Right.
everyone was excited and everybody was crying and they were so happy. And I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
wait, guys,
it's
wait.
not. And they were like, no, you don't know how it works, but you won. And
Yeah.
at that moment, I was like, okay. And I
Wow.
got to breathe, and it was just a great moment. I have a lot of family, lots of
Yeah.
friends and family, and just surround and thinking, you really, if I can do this, anyone can do this,
Yeah.
because I just consider myself just, regular person
Yeah.
wanting to do something that looked almost unattainable, but
Well,
with hard work.
you said that you really never saw yourself like in politics, but was there ever like something in leadership as a woman? Did you ever hold a leadership position?
Well, I never really walked in that path. I think that most politicians do in order to get to
Mm-hmm.
whatever position that they aspire to be in. And so, although I didn't sit on any kind of boards, city boards or civic boards or community boards, I did have a lot of leadership roles in my practice. I'm an attorney by trade,
Oh,
and so
okay.
we do have a national organization, and
Mm-hmm.
I did lots of conferences about work-life balance, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so, yes, in my professional life, but not necessarily community involved.
Yeah, wow. Who were the women in your life? Maybe a mom, a grandmother, a tia, or, a comadre or something that maybe inspired you along the way.
I have a lot of women in my life. Like many Hispanic families, my mother came from a very large family, so I have a lot
Hmm.
of tias,
Yeah,
and they're all fantastic. And I think they're part of the reason why I'm in this position, because
yeah,
they worked really hard,
that's wonderful.
in knocking on doors and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, when I look at who I really, you know, was in my life and really shaped the kind of person that I am today is my mom.
Wow.
She's just, a woman of faith.
Mm,
She's just someone that showed me that our purpose here is not so much to serve ourselves, but to serve others.
that's right. The Bible talks about the older women mentoring and helping the younger women, and I think we've lost that along the way. I remember growing up, my grandmother was very involved in shaping, and both my parents' side actually, in shaping my life.
Right,
The do's and the don'ts, like you should be over there, or make
right.
sure that always correcting, and like con la vara, that
Yes.
little vara, kind of like telling us where we should or should not go. And I think that's kind of has been lost through the generations. And I love to tell younger women that they need to find themselves. If they don't have a mother or a tia, a grandmother in their life, that they need to find that godly woman in
Yeah,
their life that will help guide them, that's gonna be bold enough to tell them, like, hey, you need to stop what you're doing, like,
right.
hey, wake up, you're going in the wrong direction. But
Yeah,
and we need to do more of what the Bible says, that the older women to help shape. And so I know I do with my daughters. I've got two adult daughters, and sometimes it's like, yeah, but your mom, it's like, I don't know that I want to do what you say, but now that my girls are adults, I don't necessarily tell them what to do, but I can influence
right.
what they do. And I think that as women, we are influencers, because
Absolutely.
we even influence our husbands. Isn't that right? As women, we have a way of influencing our husbands. And so
Right.
I think we need to rise up at a greater level and do a better job as women to influence the younger generation, to rise up. And I think you're doing that just by your
Thank
example.
you.
I really think that you're doing that. You're paving the way for other Latinas and younger women to be that voice, the voice for our cities and for our states, and beyond. Who knows? Maybe one day we will have a female president. I don't know.
Maybe
But
one day.
maybe. But as a Latina in leadership, what personal values have guided you along the way when you've like really faced difficult decisions, difficult things in your position?
I think I rely a lot on prayer.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to me. I try to really be intentional with the things that I do, and when I find myself in situations where there's a little doubt or I feel conflicted, I pray
Mm-hmm.
on it. And
Yes.
and that really helps me. It helps me, really focus and remember why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, because
Yeah.
it can be difficult sometimes.
Of course.
Leadership
Yeah.
isn't always easy, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to please all people.
Correct.
And so, I think that prayer kind of grounds me and gives me the perspective that I need. And
Yeah,
and then
that's
I feel
good.
like,
Mm,
it doesn't matter what anyone says or what anyone thinks. I know that what I'm doing is right, and I've thought about it, I've researched it, I've done all the things I need to do,
yes.
and then I sat
You've
and I
done your
prayed on it.
homework.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
wonderful. Prayer has gotten me through so many things in life. And, as pastors, a lot of people would think, well, it's because you're a pastor. That's why you always have the victory, or that's why. But no, we still have to do
The work.
our our own praying. We've got to
Right.
pray. We've got to do our own diligence and seek God on our own. And but praying really does answer um our prayers, and or it gives us the direction that
Right.
we need to lead and to do the things that God is calling us to do. Because I think that, imagine if we didn't have that communication with God. I think we'd be lost in a sense, or we'd be confused. And I think God, like you said, it keeps you grounded, and it keeps you knowing where you are, who you are, and what you've been called to do. And so, but yeah, I love that. And that was really is my next question. How do you stay grounded spiritually and emotionally amid the pressures of public office? Because I know that sometimes people can be mean.
Yes,
Yes.
you know, uh, I think we live in this digital world now,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's much different now than it was in the past. And so, I always joke and say, if you want to know about all your insecurities, or you want to learn about what people think of you, then run for
Read,
office,
yes, run for office
because
or read leadership.
people can be relentless,
Yes.
but I really think that, talking about, my mom and um, who shapes you growing up, and your
Mhm.
values, and how to deal with things really comes from your upbringing. And I remember, just, I lost my mom in 2020, so it was a
Mhm,
difficult
mhm.
time during the pandemic
Oh,
and
wow.
everything that was going on. But, I prior to that, for about 10 years or so, she was really, really sick. Her
Mhm,
health continued to decline and deteriorate over
mhm.
time. But I always saw that no matter how sick she was somehow the strongest person that I knew.
Wow.
And I remember specifically one time, she had a lot of health issues. No matter, you could, whatever, whether it be diabetes or heart issues, kidney failure, I felt like every possible thing that can go with wrong with your body happened to my mom. And
Wow.
you would think that that would break her, but and someone that could have a reason to doubt or to
Mm,
lose
yeah.
faith. She had every reason to for that to happen to her. But I remember one time we were in the hospital, which we were many, many times. And when you're a heart patient, there's like the heart floor,
Right.
and so we're there, and she was in a lot of pain, and they give you pain medication kind of on a schedule. And
Mhm.
she was needing uh, some more medication, but she had to wait for the doctor and all this, and she was in a lot of pain. But she could hear this lady down the hall that was kind of crying out in pain,
Mhm.
and I guess she didn't have anybody with her. So I remember she grabbed me and by the arm and said, "Well, I want you to pray with me. We're going to pray for her. We're
Oh,
going to pray for
wow.
healing, pray for peace, pray for, for
Wow.
God to touch her." And I just remember thinking like, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
I'm a wreck, and I'm healthy, and you're here. And so
Yeah.
every time I have these kinds of issues, and I think like, how am I going to get through this? I think to
Mhm.
myself, like, how would my mom handle this?
Yeah.
These are things that sometimes in the moment we think that they're the most difficult, but
Yeah.
there are really bigger problems out there.
That's right. Somebody else
Yeah.
is got it a lot worse, you
So
know?
I try to think of, think of my mom, think of this lady down the hall that
Yeah.
maybe, I could be in either of those situations, and yet I get to be here and deal with
Yeah.
criticism and things like that that really aren't that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I love that. And I love having those type of stories that you can always go back to and hold on to and then share with your kids later on, when they're facing, hey, but remember what grandma said.
Right, right.
A matter of fact, my mom and I were having a conversation just the other day about something that my grandmother had told her, and that she still held on to that,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, mom, my mom is 80. And my grandmother passed away when I was 12 years old, and so this is like so many years later,
Right.
and we're still holding on to those words
Yeah.
of encouragement and words of faith and stuff. So. What advice would you give Hispanic women who feel called to leadership but maybe don't feel qualified enough?
I think this for all women, Hispanic women, of course, too,
Mm.
but really all women. I think when we look at men, they don't wait until they check all the boxes for all qualifications to
Yeah,
step into that role.
yeah.
Women want to be overqualified before they step into that.
Yes, that's so true.
And we can't do that anymore, because if we're going to have the representation that we need for women to be represented,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be more confident and confident in our lived experience, and that we can surround ourselves by good people to get the rest of what it is that we need to be successful, and not wait. Because if not, if we keep waiting, then
Yeah.
we're never going to be ready.
That's right. We never will. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another. And as
Right.
as women, and if, especially, married and with kids, you
Right.
play so many roles in a household, and you're trying to wear all these hats at once, and then, what? You want me to into public office? What are you talking about?
Right.
Wasn't called for that. I don't know if I can do that, but I think that what you're doing, like I said earlier, you're carving the path for everybody else. Those other young women, those Harlingen women, even that are watching you, that are looking up to you, and I think that's just a wonderful, wonderful example.
Thank you.
And so, but what legacy do you hope to leave behind as a city? Or for the city as mayor, once you're done here and you're done with your role.
I hope to leave, Harlingen in a better place than when I found it, more inclusive, more diverse, and moving forward with intention,
Yeah,
and having an opportunity for other people that look like me, right?
yeah,
To
absolutely.
consider the role and feel that because I can, they can too.
Yeah. Is there anybody that you maybe somebody in your school when you were going through your education that you looked up to and that maybe you said like, wow, like I want to be like that one day, or I want to be that bold one day.
You know, I had a lot of people in my life growing up that I felt that were very strong women.
Mm-hmm.
Several when I was in middle school and high school, but really there was one lady when I was in law school that she kind of took me under her wing, and I
Mhm.
was her research assistant. And I just saw how strong and independent that she was, and how she could command a room, and with a whole bunch of people, asking questions, difficult questions, hard questions, and really
Yeah.
leading with this presence, where
Yeah.
whenever she spoke, everybody just listened. And it
Wow.
was, she to me embodied what I wanted to be as a lawyer.
Mhm.
And I think about her still, to this day, just because of the fact that, you go into classrooms, and sometimes you're just there to kind of, you want to learn, check it off
Mhm.
the list. But then there's some that you walk in and you're engaged, and you're not on your phone, you're not distracted, you're
Mhm.
just focused. And I remember her just really having that ability to do that. And I thought, that's pretty impressive for a whole bunch of adults that have a million things going through their minds and an
Yeah.
electronic device, and you're able to capture everyone's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we first started in ministry, even though I was involved in ministry, I was kind of always like in the background, and I lead worship. That's been one of my things for many, many years. And I was the background singer though. Back in the day, it was like I would sing in the background, I'll do backup, but don't put me in the front. Like I don't want to say anything. I don't want to have to, come up with anything that I have to say or recite or anything like that. And so, well, my brother, he was my the one right under me. He was the worship leader, Well, he leaves to college, Mayor, one day, and
How dare
well,
he?
guess who was up to bat? Me,
Wow.
and I was already married by then, but I was so timid. I was so timid, and it was so hard for me to say a word. My husband would, after the service, would be like, "Babe, if you could just like insert something." Just like say a little something, something that'll encourage the people, or just kind of introduce the song, but say something. I'm just kind of like looking at the piano player like, give me the note. And so he gave me, I remember he gave me a book called Breaking the Spirit of Intimidation. And it's been with me, and I've shared this story with so many people that have struggled with being intimidated
Mhm.
by other people, and it helped me tremendously. And now my husband's like, yeah, cállate, like you're talking like way too much. You only had 5 minutes.
Now you have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so, but I think that's so wonderful. I always wanted to be like that person that could, take over this room, walk in, and everybody's like, shh, so and so is here, But I really had to work hard at becoming the person that I am now. It didn't come naturally. But it was really about confidence.
Yes.
And another was trusting the Lord. A lot of people have asked me, like, Pastor Rose, like, how do you do it when you go up there? You just sing, and it's just like everything just comes out. And I'm like, well, I wasn't always like that, you guys. Like, hey, but I learned to trust God
Right.
through it, that I I was like that one person that just fell off, and just like a skydiver, you just got to do it. And once you're there, the Lord just takes over, and he
Yeah.
gives you the confidence, the wisdom, the guidance that you need. And so that's kind of how I learned, just by trial and error, in a way too, because there were times where, oh my gosh, like my words were scrambled, and or I couldn't get the key. Have you ever I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but I one time I went deaf, like
Oh my
you couldn't
goodness.
even hear. I couldn't hear the note. I don't know what you call that. I think it's like note deaf, or I don't know what it's called, but I couldn't hear the note. And I look at everybody behind me like, "Help me." It's like 500 people in the room waiting
Oh
for me
no.
to start the song, And so, at that moment, I think it was like, okay, Rosemary, like you need to really learn how to depend on God, and
Right.
and because I didn't want to do it anymore. It was like, that's it. Like my career is over.
I'm
It's
done.
done. It's done. I'm gonna be fired. The pastor's wife got fired.
Oh,
But I really dealt with a lot of that timidity, and
right,
or competing with others, like, well, I don't sound like them, and I don't
right,
sing as good as them. And I'm sure sometimes maybe you've dealt with that, like, oh, like maybe, or people have compared you to others. And
right,
even comparison is really hard, because we can fall into that trap and never get out. But just
right.
being confident in who God called you to be, and the gifts that God gave you. And so those are the things that really kept me going, and kept me to or just walking in my calling, I guess.
Yeah,
Confident, with the confidence, and just being content with who I am in God, and the gifts that God has given me, that maybe you're not supposed to be that person. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you're supposed to be this person, and
right.
it's okay. It's okay to be that person. And so um, but I love that we have women that we can look up to, and
Absolutely.
that we can even strive to be like. I think
Right.
that's wonderful, and that we have great examples. But we were talking about media, and how everybody like looks to media now. And I was watching a video the other day, and I'm showing my husband, and he's like, "Babe, that's AI."
Oh, I know.
And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah. So now you don't even know who's real and who's not,
Yes.
who's authentic and who's not."
Right.
And so, isn't that crazy that we live in a world like that now?
It really is. And I know that, it's interesting because I think it's really impacting our community, our children. I when I grew up, and I'm sure, when we grew up, when we
Hmm.
had to do like a research paper, you'd go to the library,
Yes.
you'd pull out the little card to find the
Hmm.
book, and you do your
We had the
research.
encyclopedias at
Oh,
home.
yes, I had encyclopedias at home, and you'd cite your
Yes.
sources, and
Yes.
you definitely were it was your words, your
Your
thoughts,
work.
and your work. And
Yes.
now it seems that, what's going to happen to, our children when they don't have to put in that work?
That
What's going to
effort. Yeah.
happen with that, those skills that you need to develop to
Yeah.
analyze something on your own? And I see it because I see online there's these whole debates with people, and
Hmm.
they're debating, but none of it is their own words, because you can just tell that everything is AI generated.
Wow.
And so it's really concerning to me.
Yeah.
And but we have to find a way to navigate through it, and still instill in our kids,
Yes.
which is our responsibility as
That's
parents, to
right.
say, you know what, we know that there's these tools available. And
Yeah.
just like there were calculators and things like that, we
Yes.
still had to do the work, and
Right.
making sure that they're still doing that so that they can be productive adults in the
Yes.
future. Because if not, I don't know
We're
what's
in
going to
trouble.
happen.
All of my kids, I have four kids, and they're all adults, and I'm so glad. Like, I am so
Right?
glad I am
Past
not
that
raising
period.
young kids in this era, in these times. And
Right.
so, but let me ask you, what is your greatest accomplishment, you think, as mayor? Or what is something that you've done for the city that you're just really proud of right now?
I think the city's in a great place. We've done a lot of really great work over the last few years, from lowering the tax rate more than
Hmm.
12% since I took office. We've
Wow.
got is the economic kind of boom in construction and things like that. But really, I think one of the things that I set out to do was transform City Hall and to be more
Hmm.
accessible to the people.
Wow.
And that was one of the reasons that I really got into this, because I tried, navigating City Hall, and I found it very difficult. And so it's
Hmm.
not perfect, but I will say that I really wanted to ensure that people felt comfortable and that their um, governing body was accessible. So some
Yeah.
of the things that I did upon taking office is I made sure that if you wanted to contact the mayor or any of the city commissioners, that you could go on the City of Harlingen website, you'd find their phone number, their cell phone number, their email address, so you could have direct communication and not have some secretary or an assistant answering. So I did that, and then we moved on to we have a public comment period in our commission meetings, and those used to be 2 minutes where anyone can come and speak for 2 minutes. We changed that to 3 minutes, which is not much, but it's a little more time
Yeah.
to kind of gather your thoughts and express your concerns or ideas. And one of the things that I've been doing since I took office is I've encouraged town halls. So our first year, we had, I want to say, 5 different listening sessions where we just came in, listened to the community, have them tell us their concerns. We did additional town halls. And, within all the districts in the city, did that the following year and then the following year. And so then last year I said, well, because I didn't, I was hoping that I could be here, I'm starting my second term, but you never know what's going to happen. And so
Right.
I wanted to ensure that this open government and town halls and just really making sure that you're accessible became part of Harlingen's identity in
Right.
terms of accessibility. So I drafted an ordinance that requires now that every city commissioner have a town hall in their own district, at
Wow.
least one per year. And then we have one comprehensive town hall where we have the entire commission and all of the directors and, senior staff members at the city come together and really be responsive to the community. And so it passed unanimously at the commission. And so
Yeah.
now moving forward, this will be, this will live way past myself,
Yeah.
right? And I think that was one of my goals, was to
Wonderful.
ensure
Yeah.
accessibility. And so unless, this ordinance gets rescinded
Yeah.
or removed some way, but that would have to be in a public way. So I don't think that would
Right. Because the
happen.
public want it.
The public wants it. Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
we also do other things like walks with the mayor and coffees with the mayor podcast
Yeah.
and all of
That's
these
awesome.
things that I don't know that will survive past me, but
Yeah.
I know the town halls will.
Yeah. Well, that's so awesome. I love, reading the things that you post and things like
Thank you.
that. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, Mayor, you tell the mayor, come on, go, go, go. I am really one of your number one fans. I really am.
Oh,
And I say
thank
that
you.
honestly, just because Harlingen is my city. And by the way, I'm married to a greyhound. Greyhound.
I know
Sorry.
you are. I was told that, I think the last time I was here.
Yeah, so
We'll,
that's why I'm
we'll
very
forgive him
proud.
and we will forgive you.
Absolutely, but oh my gosh, but yeah, I really have enjoyed, the
Thank
years that
you.
you've been in office, and I we have really seen the change, the difference, and so we really appreciate you and we honor you today. So thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope you've enjoyed your time here.
I did. I absolutely did. I appreciate you taking the time to, spend this half hour or so here with
Mhm.
me. I love what you're doing here. I think it's
Thank you.
incredible. Thank you for, pouring into our community and being a resource for so many.
Thank
And I'm
you.
sure that this is just one more way for you to reach the people,
Absolutely.
not just in this community, but in this region. And I
Yeah.
know you're all across the valley.
Yes.
So we appreciate everything that you do, and I hope that God continues to bless you and continue with your success for you and your
Thank
family.
you. Thank you so much. Well, those of you that have been watching, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you want to follow Mayor Norma Sepúlveda, you should look her up on Facebook and see the differences that she is making for the city of Harlingen. And please share this podcast. I'm sure that it's going to be of inspiration to other women, especially women in leadership, women who have have an aspiration to be in leadership, have a desire to grow in leadership. So thank you again for watching. God bless you. Share this podcast and make sure you subscribe to our page. God bless. We'll see you next time.